Yeah.
Hi. Okay, I think I'm broadcasting, but I invited Ed, and I'm in my office. It's just I don't see any video happening. No, does he have to accept before I see him? Okay. I just went into Google Plus and I did a hangout on him. Yep. I invited him. Uh-huh. Yeah, Tiffany should be here too, but I don't know if she is. Let's see. You did? That is interesting, isn't it? Is it me? Oh. Oh, the personal one. Okay. Oh.
All right, so I'm in. Can you see me?
Yep. Should I hang up the phone now?
Yep.
So
I can't see you per se.
you can't?
No. If you click on the gear up, like the settings,
Yep.
and then where it says, like, I guess you probably can't change the camera, but do you have your laptop closed?
Oh, yeah. We've been through this, Eric.
Yeah, but you might have to reset this up
Yeah.
unless there's Ed.
I bumped myself back into this. I saw that there was an indicator on my screen that someone had tried to reach me, so I was able to link in. But I don't know that John will notice that.
Yeah, and like my iPad and phone were ringing, but I have no idea like how or where. So, as long as he has his email up and it's a
Can you see
Gmail.
me?
Yeah, I can see you.
Yeah.
No problem, Glenn.
Yeah, he has his email up, but I didn't hear any ringing from you guys either on my end, like it was with you this morning. Do you have John? Do you have to be in your Google Circles?
No, as long as you have your email open.
Huh.
Sometimes it rings in Google Plus, so like you have to have Google Plus open, which is confusing. But
yeah.
Do you think he has either of those, or would have used
He does.
those?
I tested it with him this morning.
Okay.
Let's
just re-invite him and see.
Yeah, let me just. Maybe I can from here. I do have invite now, so are you going to do it?
No, go for it.
All right, let's see what happens. Although I click on invite and nothing happens.
Yep. Hey, Glenn, did you add, is it John that needs to be added?
Yeah.
Okay, what's his email?
J.H. Faust.
J.H.
FAUST. .MILC.
MILC.
And
at Gmail.
Ed, just so you know, Gwen this is technically like it's broadcasting to record it, just so you know.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay.
Fine. That's fine.
No, I know. It's already. I see that it's already live, so I like to at least
All
give
right.
people a heads up. And I don't know, other than just trying to email him and tell him to look for that link.
Or I can call him.
We'll watch you.
I'll call him, yeah. Let's see. Hey, John, it's yeah, I'm on the call, but I had to like stumble into it. It didn't ring on my end, so can you look for a link or in your Google Plus? What I saw was a little bell with a couple of numbers on it up in the corner of my Gmail. If you click on the bell and then you don't see Gwen. Huh. I don't know, Eric. He doesn't see the same thing. He doesn't see. What do you see in that little bell? Or Eric, where should he else should he look?
That bell should really be where it should say like somebody has invited you to a hangout.
Yeah, it should say something like somebody has invited you to a hangout, and then you get the choice to join the hangout.
Or if he clicks on where it says like plus, mine says plus Eric.
Yeah, click on plus John. Okay.
And then once that opens up, there's a hangout like chat bar on the right side that should show that Gwen's invited him to a hangout.
Yeah, you don't. Yeah, on the right side when you click on plus John, you don't see Gwen Anderson show up there. Okay, click on that and see if there isn't a join. I don't know. You might as well. He's adding Gwen to circles. I don't know. That's what he sees in the other. I mean, it can't hurt, right?
Yeah. There we go. Looks like he's joining.
You're joining, it looks like. You're coming in. There he is.
Hey.
Okay, I'm going to hang up.
All right. I'm out of here, guys.
All right, Eric,
Yeah.
well, what do we do when it blows up?
Good luck. All right. See ya.
Hi, John.
Good morning or good afternoon.
Yeah. Hi, you guys. I don't know what switches have you guys used this before?
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, what switches the camera back and forth? It's kind of wild.
It's your voice.
Oh, it's just, yeah, it's voice activated. Okay.
Well, that's
what do you have in front of you guys?
We have the whole shebang.
The whole shebang.
The survey data.
Yep. Okay. Good. So here's what I'm going to try and do, Gwen, if it makes sense to you, and then you tell me. I think I'll give you kind of an overview of the format of the report. What we've done for other folks is look at what's in the report proper, and then actually have John kind of go through the survey data with you because I think that's going to be the most distinct information as it relates to the early childhood program.
Okay.
You know, unlike some of the others, you know, the report is written from the perspective of the whole district and our interpretations of the accumulated or aggregated data, but the survey information is going to be much more specific. So what I was thinking is if I can, I'm going to try and share my screen and just point you to, I was able to do this morning, so I hope I don't blow the whole thing up.
Okay.
But my desire is to, and are you ACMON? Is that your moniker there? Am I sharing my screen now with you? No. Let's see. I was able to do this, but I just pressed a bunch of different buttons this morning. Let's try this.
I see your screen now.
Gwen, do you see my screen?
Yep.
Oh, good. So what I have here then is on page 6. I'm starting on page, the first part of the report, first several pages just explains the framework and the information. What's important to understand when you're looking at the report components is this page 6 rating scale and rubric definitions. For each of the component areas, we accumulated and made a judgment about where the district falls on this continuum that we've developed that really focuses not on good or bad, but where you are in terms of development from not implementing to sustainability. And what you'll see is there's some guidance and some definition for each of the components of the rubric that talks about whether or not the score would reflect little or no implementation. Some beginning implementation but not critical mass would be associated with consensus.
I'm looking for that particular. I'm looking for that hunk. So.
You're looking for that in your report?
Yeah.
Should be on page 6.
Is the cover page?
Oh, do you have a small version of the report?
I don't know. It started out with orange.
That's all the survey data, Gwen.
That's the survey data. There's an actual, maybe you don't have the actual narrative report.
It should be in the drop. Well, they don't have access to the Dropbox.
You just have the survey data?
Just a second.
Okay. Technology is great, but it's not the same as being in the same room.
I hope it's not snowing there today.
Good Lord.
It's raining. I found it.
Okay.
All right, I'm on page 6.
Yeah, so page 6 shows, and the reason I'm just gonna, this is how you understand the rating for each section. Each section will have a rating in this area. And the important part about this for you and for anybody who's looking at this report to realize that it's not about that everybody's expected at this point to be getting 15s everywhere, but it's about trying to give you feedback as to where you are and where your work should emphasize and be focused now to move forward. And actually, if you look at this part of the rubric, the bottom part of the rubric on 6, what's associated with each of the levels is also information about the kinds of actions that are going to be important to move you forward up this implementation scale. So when you're talking about an area that there might not be much implementation, a score or a rating of 1 through 3, that's a place where staff probably need information, and they need to be given some opportunities to understand what that is and to build their background knowledge and to connect it to their experience and so forth. And as you go forward, there are certain, you either need to provide additional information, training, support to understand the implications of the innovation and so forth. So as you're looking at the scores, keep that in mind. And then when you go through the report, you'll see that there are two broad sections, system foundations, and the second part are building blocks, I think. And each one of those has some particular subcomponents. So I'm going here to page 8 where vision is discussed. And each section will have a description of what we're looking at in that section, why it's important in the continuous improvement process, and then a rating. And in the case of vision, our rating is that you're just on the front end of that, building consensus around your vision, and in some ways probably reestablishing a vision under a new leadership structure and so forth. So I'm not going to talk through each of these sections. I just wanted to sort of walk you through a little bit so that you knew what was there. And it's good reading. It might help put you to sleep at night. But each section also then contains information about the strengths and opportunities for improvement that we saw. And then at the end of each section are some particular questions that we think, if you're looking at it with teams or thinking about addressing that topic, these are the kinds of things that you will want to consider and be able to answer. Does that make sense?
Yep, it sure
as
does.
you look at the report?
Yep.
Good. So then at the very end of the report, what we're going to emphasize here, in addition to the data, at the very end of the report is a section, and I believe it begins, see if I can find it without making myself dizzy here. It begins on page 27, and those are the general impressions. This is sort of the executive summary and really our general impressions and conclusions. So we talk about where we see the district right now in terms of the assets and opportunities for improvement, and then also after that discuss some prioritized recommendations. So what I think I'm going to suggest we do, John, is I'm going to bring up the data now onto my screen. And do you see what I have up, John?
I don't, but before we get to that, can I just add a couple comments in about the ratings and stuff like that as well?
Please do. Yeah.
I think if you think about the process that you went through for your implementation of PBIS and look at that as a model for implementation for the academic side of this, it will be very helpful because I think you're familiar with that. And again, those, that continuum of change really is not linear. What we're suggesting is that there's a place to start, and that's where we feel you get the most leverage. However, as you're working, if you're working on consensus, you also have to look ahead at working at implementation and sustainability and things like that as well. So, and you never get done with all of these things. As you get new staff in, how are you going to bring them up to understanding of what your vision is and what you do and what you're all about in the district. So what I keep hearing feedback on myself, but so there were 3 parts to the survey. There was demographic data that we had, and then there were 10 belief questions and practices questions. And in the demographic section, you can, as Ed is looking at that, you can see that there were 214 respondents for this throughout the district, and that is pretty consistent throughout all the things. One of the things that we did as well is we had you identify which PLCs you were associated with that. But as we report out the data, we did not slice and dice it to include the PLCs, simply because those numbers were so small. So,
John, can I interrupt and just check? Gwen, are you folks seeing the data as John's talking, or no?
It's flashing up because when I see it is when you're speaking.
Oh, I see.
Yep.
I don't know how to make it go when John's. I was hoping that I could.
Yeah, that would be good.
Control this. Okay. Are you able to find this data in your packet? It should be in your hard packet too.
Yep. Can you do the graphs have page numbers or not?
They don't.
They're separated by colors. There's orange, and that's the demographics, and I think the green is beliefs, and maybe a yellow is the practices or something like that. I hope I didn't get the order wrong.
Okay, so what do you want to look at?
Let's start with. Should we go just to beliefs, John? Because I think yeah.
I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. We're at beliefs.
Question 1. Are you at?
We're at beliefs.
Question 1.
Okay. Oh, question 5.
No, start with 1. You're funny.
Do you want me to go?
I think they're trying to find question 1 yet.
Well, let me know when you want me to go.
Okay. Are they all out of order, Gwen?
Well, I messed up a little bit. Is question number... Yeah, I think they go with the first one. Okay, question number 1. In our district school, professional development is aligned.
That's practices.
That's practices.
That's practices.
There should be question 1 for beliefs is, I believe that all children have the ability to achieve the high academic and behavioral standards.
I'm not sure how I can share my screen.
Do you have it up, John? What I did is I went to screen share. If you have it up, I went to screen share, and then I was able to see what I wanted to share, and I selected that. And then I pressed Start Screen Share.
Yeah.
So I had to get the screen share button up on the left side.
I did that, but I'm not seeing now.
When you click on that, you get a screen that shows a number of possibilities. Full screen, ACMON.
You're sharing your screen too, or?
Yeah, it's probably when I talk mine. Do you see this? This is mine. I'll stop sharing.
We don't have any in that section at all.
Okay.
We only have the practices section.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
John, I stopped sharing now, so maybe you can now? I don't know.
I click on it and nothing happens.
Are you on your Mac or your PC?
I'm on my Mac.
Oh, well, yeah, so that might be different. That's why. Well, here's what I think we will do. We will, how about, John, if we describe and if they have the beliefs, I mean the practices, let's start and talk about, just show them the format for what those, how those responses are charted, or, you know, and how they, what they see in the different parts of the chart, and then maybe just talk broadly about the different pieces that you saw, and they can listen so that when they go back and they've got the whole thing, they can interpret. Does that make sense? And so what, if they could look at the practices one that they have, and go ahead and then just go with that first question, John, on practices, and tell them how to, in our district, professional development, and tell them how to interpret that chart.
Okay. Practices, what you're hopefully seeing is there should be a yellow bar at the top.
Yep.
That says question 1, and then it describes the question. In our school district, professional development is aligned and supportive of district and building strategic plans and initiatives.
Yep.
And there should be a chart underneath that, a bar chart. And then to the right of the bar chart, you should see a consensus table. And the way we set up the consensus table is a strong consensus is 80% or more of respondents either strongly agree or agree. Nearing consensus is 70 to 79% of the respondents in that range. Low consensus is 51 to 69. And what we've labeled poor consensus is 50% and below. And so does that make sense, or do you need some clarification on that part?
Makes sense.
All right, and then if you look at the table that's above the chart and the consensus table, what you'll see is we have Princeton High School, Princeton Middle School, North Elementary School, South Elementary School, and then the Community Ed ETF. So in looking at this, you'll see response percent, and there should be 4% and 66.7%. That is the rating for the entire district. And you can see then the breakdown for Community Ed ECFE. You had 80% of that, which was located in the summary at the bottom of the table. And you can look and see across, the district how people feel about that. At your level, you are at consensus at this. And so there's another category as we go through some of this data that it's the don't know category or not applicable category. And sometimes there are a lot of responses in there that indicate that it's something that people just don't know or understand. And so that might be a difference in language that we use as compared to the language that you use for the practices. It could be that people just aren't familiar with that. And so that don't know, not applicable category as well is something to pay attention to make sure that when you interpret the data, you're understanding, and it might give you some directions to head also for professional development. So, any questions on how that's set up? Or
Nope.
I don't have a question, but I do have a comment. I know for me, it was hard answering some of the questions for things that were district-wide because we're not always familiar with what happens at every building, just kind of what happens with your own. I think that's why you'll get people that may put not applicable because they're not sure, or they just don't know just because they don't know about the rest of the district.
And I think that's a valid and important comment. And so as folks use these data to think about what actions might help to build consensus in the various areas, for those items where there are high numbers of not applicable, at least one consideration would be, do we communicate how we are performing or in this area across all of our levels? Are we connected? And we talked, I think, at some length with your group in particular about the need to be connected as a district of school district rather than a district of schools.
Right. Especially with the next school up or the school behind you.
Right.
I think it's when you're talking with parents or, you know, or especially for us, because we talk with parents I talk with parents every day, and letting them know what to expect at the next school. Yep. I think that's important. I think it's important the whole district, but especially the next level up.
Yes, exactly. And so if you were to say, if we were to bite off a piece to build into an improvement plan, the first part would be at least let's make sure we've got communication flowing on those, what would you call them, consecutive buildings. Mm-hmm. That's a good point. Very good point. So does it make sense? Do you want John to kind of highlight some of the parts of the practices and you can follow along?
Well, are we going to go over early childhood specific data or your
the early childhood specific data, as John was pointing out, is, you can look at this first question and see that you guys your perception in terms of the professional development and participation in professional development and support at your level, you guys are pretty positive about what's available and made available to you. Okay. The rest of the district responses were much less consistent, and there looked like there might be some need to attend to some of the perceptions that there may not be sufficient ongoing professional development and coaching at other levels of the district.
Right. And the whole point of this assessment was to help the district align itself from early learning through grade 12. So, and that's why it's important, I think, to see how you connect with the buildings that are coming up, but also with the high school, because you're laying the foundation for what comes next. So your work is critically important that you're doing. So
I'll just make another comment there. I think this first question, or these first couple of questions even, where the ECFE section is demonstrating the strongest consensus. Those are places maybe where the rest of the district should be saying, what are the kinds of things that you guys are doing to address this area that seem to be meeting the needs of your folks? Now, one of the things in terms of professional development might be that you're a smaller number of people, so it's easier to kind of bring you together and get you on the same page. But that doesn't, just because there are more people and it might be harder to accomplish some consistency in professional development and support at another level, doesn't mean that it's not a worthy and important objective. So I think that's another way you might use these.
Well, and looking at that one, on here it says the middle school is at 81.48%, which is actually higher than ours. It's just...
Well, yeah.
Did I screw up?
Yeah, they should be green, I suppose. Yeah.
Well, it was at 80, and then even south is at 76, which is pretty close. So I think buildings are
right.
pretty strong, and then it's the other two that are middle of the
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so you're doing exactly what you should do with this data, and that is look at the overall picture. What does that mean, and how does that break out into the individual buildings? Not that it's a competition, but that it should give you some information about where could we look for some strength and maybe to capitalize on some success, and where would we look to if we wanted to have impact in moving the entire district towards greater consensus.
And I think if I were a principal, especially one, like in this case at the high school or at North Elementary with a lower number, I would want to talk to the other principals and say, hey, I noticed that your percentage is much higher of people who agree with this question. What do you think you're doing something different maybe than what I am?
Yes.
How can I boost my number? So I think it's important to see school and for the principals to communicate.
Yeah, exactly, and to have that kind of communication across the leadership teams even. I think the other caution I will share, though, is what I think from a district perspective is most helpful is to get a big sense, a big picture understanding of the areas that you want to improve on, and then target some of the specific items from the survey as being maybe most relevant in guiding your improvement discussion. What I caution against is going through item by item and trying to build plans for every single item and try, you just get too fragmented to do that. So,
yeah. For example, question number 2 is really based on a fair amount of research that's been done on professional development and the manner in which professional development is delivered so that it gets into the teaching repertoire and the administrative repertoire of staff. That's not to say that going to a conference is good or bad or indifferent, but what we know from the Joyce and Showers research, for example, is that if you just go to a demonstration, there's only a 10% likelihood that you will incorporate that into your teaching practices. And they go on to talk about then if you get an overview, you see something, but then they have you practice it. It goes up. I can't remember the percentage off the top of my head, but then if you combine instruction with practice and then with feedback and coaching, then there's a 90% likelihood that that's going to become part of your repertoire of skills. So that's looking at professional development in that way. So
engagement.
yep.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So.
So John, why don't you take us through some of the highlights that you see in the practices at least, and maybe even the beliefs, even though they don't have them handy.
I copied off the written part of the beliefs because I had the disc you gave me.
Oh, yeah.
So I have the.
You have the comment. You have the comments or the.
Yeah, it is.
Just the comments.
Yeah. So, one of the questions that we brought up to the district leadership teams is the use of paraprofessionals and including paraprofessionals in professional development. And this was an area that was weak all across the district. And I remember some paraprofessional comments, I believe, that indicated they would like to be part of the training. And it's been my experience that paraprofessionals often get some of the more challenging students with whom to work, but if we want to provide a solid base of evidence-based reading instruction, for example, at the early learning and elementary level, paraprofessionals should receive, just like teachers do, embedded coaching and support as well. So that is one broad area that everyone should pay attention to and work on.
That's interesting that that is coming up, because we just did instructional rounds, and many people commented about utilization of adults in the room, and
Yeah.
as something that we should probably look at.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's good insights on it. You know, question 4 with community ed and ECFE, that came out, you know, at 40% for agreement on that, but you also can notice that there's about 40% that don't know, or it's not applicable to them. And there's some questions that follow this, and you know, the question came to my mind is there a core curriculum for early learning and early childhood?
Mm-hmm. There's it's called the Indicators of Progress. It's the standards for early childhood.
Yeah.
So
the other curriculum-based measurement that applies, do you guys, I forget what, I know you guys were talking about the indicators of progress. The curriculum-based measurement example would be like the individual growth and development indicators. Do you guys do those at all? IGDs?
They're done with some students. We use,
Sure.
a few different assessment tools.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess in terms of the this component, it may be just understanding how to categorize the assessments that you do have and understand them in this context, or it may be, you know, in some cases, not having some of the pieces together. So.
Yeah. So I think if you look at some of these next questions, you know, using data about making changes to the core, to discipline, you can see that across the district, you know, that's an issue, and that your level, you're at about 70% consensus on that. But I think if you lump the data questions together, you might start to see, you know, some patterns that start to emerge. And again, I think that's pointing in my mind to the need our assessments. I'm struggling for the word, Ed.
Well, you know, is there a clear assessment framework?
Yeah.
That guides the district and connects it's again this issue potentially of the connection between the levels on assessment, curriculum, targets, and so forth.
Yep.
Right. So
I think that's probably particularly relevant as you think about the early childhood, preschool levels.
Yeah.
Well, you'll see in question 6 with progress monitoring, and again, you know, it seems that it occurs more at your level and at South than it does throughout the district. But again, look at this data and data-based decision making, you know, in concert with each other. So.
Yep.
Question 7 looks at standard protocol intervention, and you know, here is an instance where across the district, you know, you had 33% of the respondents not knowing. So is this then lack of understanding of what a standard protocol intervention is? And that's one thing that you might want to think about, but also this is really looking at and pointing to the need about how effective is the core curriculum. Because if you have a lot of students that are not being effective or displaying the results that you want in the core curriculum, you have to address that. But it's like you can't pull them all out of the river one at a time. You need to get at bigger numbers of the students. And so a standard treatment protocol will be that students identified that have similar needs will all get the same type of intervention.
I think we're starting to. You're kind of crashing between the two pictures and doing a lot of echoing all of a sudden.
I wasn't able to clearly understand the question.
Yeah. I think we're having a little blip in bandwidth issue.
We can hear you clearly, Ed.
You can? Okay.
Can you just repeat that question again?
They're having trouble hearing you, John.
They're having trouble hearing me?
Yes. Oh, not because of your voice volume. You're cutting in and out. I don't think there's anything we can do about it. I think it's the only thing you could do is turn off your camera and try and save some, bandwidth.
Well, if I try to do that, I'll probably crash the whole.
You're clear now.
Go ahead. Yeah.
That was just for that little bit.
I can put on some headphones too, if that would help.
I don't think so.
We can hear you clearly now.
Yeah. Go ahead.
All right.
Keep trying.
I'm just scrolling down, to question 9 right now, and that's talking about how we define a problem against some standard is what that's really talking about, and using data to establish how big that problem really is. So when the example in there is Johnny reads 25 words per minute with 95% accuracy. It's really a SMART goal kind of thing, and I think you're familiar with SMART goals. But you can see that in your level, and again throughout the districts, defining performance by using data seems to be a pretty pervasive need across the district. So that if you spend more time trying to clearly understand and define what the problem is, solutions then become often easier to find. And once you've defined what the problem is in measurable, observable terms, you can assess your efforts and see if they're making a difference or not, and then change the intervention or intensify the intervention as needed. So again, here, are we having a fire?
Well, that's my phone. Sorry.
Oh.
Yeah, I ducked and covered.
Ed, it's okay. Come out from under your desk.
All right.
All right. So does that make sense? Because I think there are, this is a broad level of question, again, involving data, but then also a problem-solving process.
Mm-hmm. It's the process itself.
Yeah.
Yeah. And again, here, question 10 is a question about district leadership. And you can see in your area, that there are 4 people that didn't know. I mean, that's 40%. So again, I think this is an implication for the district leadership, to provide two-way communication, and I know that's something that's being worked on in the district. but again, it talks about that alignment of being a school district rather than a district of schools. So, question 11 again is about leadership participation and at the building level, and so that's an area that seems to be a strength, a relative strength of the district. Question 12 again focuses on problem solving and having a strategic plan. And again, I know that's something that the district is working on, so that can be lumped with one of the other questions. We won't spend a lot of time on that. Question 13 again is what the leadership teams look like, and I think many of the comments, that there are some comments there focused on that parents, aren't often represented on leadership teams, and so I think just encouragement to look who's on your team, what roles do they have, and is there any other kind of role that would be needed to increase the effectiveness of what you do as leadership teams. This is not saying that you need to have 15 or 20 people on a leadership team, because then it gets kind of unyieldy to focus the work of that team. But again, what's going to be right for you and for your context. Question 4.
We have these teams in place. What do you think we're missing here?
I think most of it, many of it was the parent. So.
Well, I can speak to. I think part of it also is, I think that the question includes the part about parent, and so in terms of the survey, folks might have responded that part isn't in place. Mm-hmm. But also, and parents are important on particular kinds of leadership teams, especially those that are focused on targeting communication and building awareness and support among stakeholders. And I'm sure you guys are now doing lots of that around your referendum, right? So that stuff is probably going to become more familiar as you experience some of your referendum work. But the other part, I think, around the teams is to define the purpose and the process that teams use for making decisions, and some of these questions relate to that. And as John said with some other questions, I think it's important to kind of dig through these, look at them individually, but then kind of group different items together into trends or patterns that tell you something potentially about the broader implications. And I really think my interpretation in having looked at these in that way is that there's a lot to do with defining. There are teams defined, but their roles and their process for doing the work varies quite a bit, and the connection across buildings is really limited.
And this is becoming a recurring theme.
Yes.
It's all about our processes there's a breakdown in our processes.
Yeah.
And consistency. It's always comes down to the process, defining what the process is, and consistency.
Yeah, and it takes a long time to figure out the right processes, and you have to stay you have to keep working on it, and moving in that direction in a while. It's so easy to slip back. Everything tends towards entropy in nature, and I think it's maybe doubly so in education.
Well, it's almost like you have to develop the process to figure out what
right.
Is, or what their role is,
Right.
So I have a question. So in that question, number 13, and asking about if there's a parent on there, is that something you're suggesting? I mean, like, we have a leadership team that's representative of teachers, the early childhood and special ed, and we have a para representative. And I'm wondering if that's something we should have a parent on, because we also have an advisory council, which is made up almost entirely of parents.
Yeah.
Not teachers. I mean, I don't know if that's what you're suggesting by having parent on there.
Yeah, and it's not as much. John, did you have a response? I'm sorry.
Well, I think the advisory council is probably a better place for parents, because when I look at that kind of leadership team, I think it's to communicate with parents about the programming that you do, but also then how your programming fits in with the district at large and things like that. So, certainly if you're discussing an individual student, you want to have a parent involved in that. But I think if you've got a parent advisory council in place, I think that's a better way to facilitate some of those bigger discussions about what we're all about, and things like that.
I think the only thing I would add to that, and I agree completely, John, is that one of the, again, it's a communication and connection piece, that we often make leadership decisions without potentially, it doesn't always have to have a parent sitting in that team, but at least the recognition that we should probably maybe get some feedback from parents and so forth. An example from our experience was we were very focused on dealing with being culturally responsive and so forth, and we were selecting a curriculum, and it struck me at some point along the way that we had had all kinds of careful discussions about how the curriculum looked to us, and we had never even asked a parent to take a look and tell us, how does it look from your perspective?
Yeah.
So those kinds of things, I don't think it's necessarily that a parent has to sit in every decision-making body, and it would be really hard to accomplish that. But the representation and consideration of the needs of that stakeholder group, that really important stakeholder group, is part of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and just like you need to understand the why of what you're doing and why you're doing it, parents also need to understand the reasons why you are doing things or considering making a change, and so that they understand that, and get out. By helping them understand the why, you can get out ahead of some of potential resistance or blowback that might occur. What's our time frame, Gwen?
I don't know. Soon, I would say.
Yeah. Why don't we? I think maybe if you have the idea, and I think you certainly do, with respect to how to look at this data and impose your understanding of context as you make some interpretations. Maybe we should just move on, John, I could just give them a quick summary from the executive summary, but I want to give you a chance, John, if you wanted to highlight any other issues, particular strength or opportunity for improvement in the area of beliefs or practices.
Well, let's just go to beliefs very quickly, and I think because there's a lot of positive things in the belief questions, and in fact, I think the responses that we received across the board in Princeton are the most positive that we have seen, and so like, I believe that all children have the ability to achieve high academic standards. As a district, you came out at about 88% on that, which is very, very high. And again, where people get tripped up is the word all. And so, this is something that you'll continually need to discuss and put that all question, right on the table and wrestle with that because, it gets in the way sometimes. And, a lot of the comments will say, well, not for kids with significant disabilities, cognitive or physical disabilities, but again, it's those students need high standards as well. Obviously, they're not going to make, grade level kind of things, but they need to have high standards so that when they exit the system, they can be functional and live as independently as possible.
Yep. Yep.
Question 3 focused on kids with high incidence disabilities like learning disabilities, emotional behavioral disabilities, speech language. And the question asks, are they capable of achieving grade level benchmarks in reading and math? And your level came out at 80% consensus on that. However, it was a weakness across the rest of the district. So again, the discussion I believe that needs to occur is simply by labeling a student with a disability, like learning disabilities, EBD, SL, does that label mean that they can't achieve? And again, this is, if we were there, that'd be a bigger question that we'd like, that we would discuss with you. But again, if you look at the fact that most kids get into LD because they can't read, does that mean that they're never going to be able to do benchmarks, which again speaks to the importance of the work that you do at your level. So generally the beliefs, if you can take a look at that, are very, very, very positive, and you can interpret that and discuss that with those other 10 questions. So, Ed?
Sure. Yeah, so that's a nice segue, John. I think the big picture, if we think about your district in comparison to others that we've worked with, that you do seem to be further along in terms of having substantial numbers of people pretty far down the road in terms of believing that this is a task that can be accomplished regardless of where a student starts, and believing that it's our role and responsibility to help students to meet these objectives. One of the questions we saw, and one of the issues that came up later through the later levels of the district was, and I think it's been reported even in your community and perhaps in our discussions with you, that there's an evolving recognition on a national basis that the skills that we have to get to by the end of high school are substantially different than they ever have been, and the need to have parents and students and teachers understand and be aligned with that is kind of important. I think particularly in a community like yours, that folks probably were fine being successful with fairly basic skills. If you graduate from high school and you get C's, you have opportunities, and it's going to be okay. In today's economy, that doesn't work out quite as well. There are very few of those basic skills jobs left, and most things require a pretty high standard. So one of the things that we noticed was a need to try and clarify and build consensus, not even just among staff, but perhaps among the community around those issues. That this isn't your father's education anymore. That and the way that we're going to do that, I think from your perspective, is that we have to intervene early. If a kid's off track, we got to figure that out right away and bring everything to bear on closing those gaps. The preschool level is if we're identifying issues that early, that gives us the highest probability of closing the gap. We put some resources in and begin and then track and follow kids systematically through their career. They have a much higher probability of hitting that endpoint goal if they were participating and if they were monitored from the very beginning and we tried to do something, rather than saying let's raise our standards and then at 10th grade let's see who's on track and then let's get busy. You know, that's way too late, way too late. Even in terms of reading, you know, we've talked about every kid a reader by 3rd grade. Well, if we start at 3rd grade and see who's on and who's not on, we run into trouble. One of the things we see sometimes at the early childhood level and preschool level is the anxiety about and the tension about what's developmentally appropriate and, you know, and what kinds of expectations can we have of kids. The research is pretty clear that even at the preschool level, there's a lot of value in kids being focused around skills, and it doesn't have to not be fun. You know, you can learn skills and have fun at the same time. There's a study that Scott McConnell did out of the University of Minnesota that talked about the fact that you can have the best classrooms and the most productive are those where you've got both happy and smart going on. You know, it's not just about making sure, and I know people are anxious. I really think it's more about the adults being anxious than it is about the kids. When we go into high quality classrooms for preschool kids, when they're doing really good skill focused work and kids are successful and they're making progress, they are having fun too. Nobody's suggesting that we just sit kids down and just do flashcards from, you know, 8 in the morning till 3 in the afternoon, but that we have to adapt our work to incorporate meaningful engagement across the way. So the other big picture, your district has a lot of strengths, and another one of the greatest ones is obviously the PBIS experience. We haven't seen a district that's had such a well deployed and sustained intervention across such a long period of time. So that's something always to really fall back on and to reflect, how did we do that? What were the pieces of that process that allowed us to bring this thing together, not just at one level, but at all levels, not just in school, but it connects to the community, and how can we replicate that kind of impact as we deploy our improvement work around academics. So I think those really are the highlights. The other thing that for the first time, we've never really made a comment on facilities in our report, other than to just generally reflect the facilities were adequate. But in your case, you see in the report that it was clear that we observed that what your challenge with respect to facilities, and up through the levels, there are some substantial issues that we're crossing our fingers that you're going to get your referendum passed, because you need it.
Yeah.
And not just this one, that as I said to the broader group, that you kind of got to reflect on how can you avoid getting so far behind in that area that you get into this corner again, because you've got a long-term, you know, issue. You've been patching it for so long that it's starting to come apart in a lot of places, and it's very hard when you get so. It's just like at home. If you let all of your maintenance projects at home go and you don't fix anything, and all of a sudden you got a huge amount of problems that are costing you money that you don't have.
We don't have the option of moving.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you're stuck.
It's not a Dodge.
So
Okay.
those are the ideas. You know, the recommendations, if you look at those on page 30, and there's the way we provide recommendations is really to try and order them, at least what makes sense to us. That I think there is one of the priorities is to build awareness around these college and career readiness skills, 21st century skills, as I talked about. And then there's a number of recommendations that relate to defining your leadership structures and roles and the connection across your levels, discussed in all of those, leading up to, and once you've got some clarity there, then leading up to carrying out the development of a district plan, and from that defining specific targets and goals. On the back page, and it just happened to turn out this way, the last 4 or 5 recommendations really have more to do with the day-to-day instructional operations, and I think they can be relevant for you guys too, and that is that most of the processes that are in place right now with regard to identifying curriculum materials, thinking about instructional practices, I think it's starting to come together and coalesce around some anchors of research-based, research validated, but they're really, that's emerging now. I don't know how you guys feel if you're anchored there well, but many of those recommendations have to do with looking at don't just look at what your curriculum is and think about do we need something else or not, but what's our process by which we consider curricula?
Exactly.
And yeah, how do we evaluate what we're trying to, the quality of the curricula and its match to what we're trying to accomplish? So, and then the assessment practices in a similar way. And the last thing is always, and I know Julia's going to guide you well in this regard, and that is, it's going to be, this is a long journey. Stop and fuel up now and then. Teachers, you know, your staff, really, we didn't hear, in the last, well, we've been doing this for a while, but I think in the last decade, the stressors and challenges on teachers have become dramatic. And we go to lots of places where they are, teachers are very overwhelmed and starting to feel hopeless. We didn't catch that as much in your district, and that's positive. But obviously you've got some things that refuel your folks in place, but those are things to continue to reinforce. It's a really you have a really nice district with people that are ready and committed to go. There are some infrastructure pieces that are ready to be both practically in terms of the plant, the physical infrastructure, and in terms of your process and procedure infrastructure that need to be advanced now. But you're at a pretty nice place, and I think pretty well positioned to be able to address these things. With the one caveat that I hope to hack you get your building stuff started again.
We're working on it big time.
Yeah. If it doesn't come through, you're gonna soldier on, but it's not impossible in those circumstances, but it becomes much more challenging. And you spend time chasing things that you shouldn't have to chase, leaky roofs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So
this is one process we have invested wholeheartedly in, and if it doesn't come to fruition, that will be disheartening as well,
Yeah. So okay.
Hey,
I know we
gotta run.
Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah. Feel free to contact us if you have additional questions, or I know this isn't the ideal way to do this. It's a little new for us, so kind of interesting. We may need to develop some skills for providing feedback in this way, but it really has been a pleasure, particularly to work with your district, and hopefully this does provide you some pieces that can start to bring things into focus and provide some more clarity and direction as you plan forward.
And I think it will, and it will be utilized. I mean, we'll use it to move forward.
I think so too. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Well,
All right. Well, thank you so much.
Then, yeah.
Okay. Bye, John. I can't see you right now, but goodbye.
Okay. It was a pleasure being there and being in your district, and I hope to come and see Princeton when it's not snowing.
Yeah. And we have a new when we have a new elementary school, right?
Yes.
Right.
Absolutely.
And we'll be there for the groundbreaking.
Okay.
All right.
All right. See you later.
Yeah.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.